Building it brick by brick.
I want to talk in this series not just about the history of racism, but I want to talk to you about why your responses to the way we fight for our liberation and equality serve to perpetuate the very racism you claim to want to get rid of just as much as we do. And that threat to racial progress is the lukewarm, kind of dismissive attitude of what Martin Luther King Jr. called the white moderate. And the thing about white nationalism is that black people aren't actually surprised by it. When the Klan of today, they still exist, hold rallies, black people are not actually surprised by Klan rallies. We've grown up with the Klan. The Klan has never gone away. The Klan we get, they're doing exactly what they said their purpose is. And I do recognize that many well-meaning white people, many white moderates, just don't understand the history, but many do.
We should never forget that everything Adolf Hitler did in Germany was legal, and everything the Hungarian freedom fighters did in Hungary was illegal. It was illegal to aid and comfort a Jew in Hitler's Germany. Even so, I am sure that had I lived in Germany at the time, I would have aided and comforted my Jewish brothers. If today I had lived in a communist country where certain principles dear to the Christian faith are suppressed, I would have openly advocated disobeying that country's anti-religious laws. I must make two honest confessions to you, my Christian and Jewish brothers. First, I must confess that over the past few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the greatest stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizens' counselor or the Ku Klux Klan,
but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection.
And they do this to the point of saying things that they think sound really good and really transcendent of the whole issue of race, but are actually very damaging. And they end up derailing the support of racial justice for black people. One of the things that white people, well-meaning white liberals, the white moderates, the white progressives say when they don't really want to talk about actual racism, especially among their own community, is that they don't see color. So one person's refusal to see race doesn't equate to the actual dismantling of structural, systemic, historical racism and all its legacies. Before the transatlantic slave trade ever happened, there were Africans in this country who were free. Indentured contracts ended. And when those contracts ended, former indentured servants were now free. and they were paid for their labor in wages and usually land. The status of slave, the status of a slave was not a lifelong status. It couldn't be passed down by birth. It was a finite labor contract. But there was a transformation from indentured servitude to racially based slavery for Black people. Not Europeans, not Irish, not British, not Italians, Black people. And it began with the misrepresented history, the misinterpreted history of Anthony Johnson. In the year 1640, the year Johnson purchased his first property, three indentured servants fled a Virginia plantation. They were caught, they were sentenced to be whipped, and they were returned to their owner. Two European indentured servants had their servitude extended for 4 years. However, the third was a man named John Punch, who was an African. He was sentenced to serve his master or his assigns for the time of his natural life. So then Johnson and the other contract holder get into a dispute over the validity of John Punch's indentured servitude contract. And from what we can tell from the record, the only thing that differentiated John Punch from the two other indentured servants was that he was African and they were Europeans. This is the first recorded history in the colonies of a court decision making a determination on the freedom of a member of the colony based on the color of their skin. Like in 1641, Massachusetts became the first colony to legally recognize slavery. Not indentured servitude, but slavery. But back in Virginia, the same year, 1665, a jury decided the land Johnson left could be seized by the government because he was, and I quote, a Negro and by consequence, an alien. So regardless of how well-meaning white moderates or progressives want to believe that we can eliminate racism and the disenfranchisement and denial of equal opportunity and discrimination and oppression that comes with it, the fact that different legal, social, and citizenship standing for some human beings, as opposed to others, that was based solely on the color of one group's skin, has been enshrined in law in this country since 1641. Just because you don't see color, just because you don't want to identify people by labels, it does not mean that this government does not. It always has, from the very earliest legal decisions in this regard, and it does to this day. The law, the society, the policies and the practices that have developed over time that have come out of the racism that this society was built on, most assuredly do see our color. And the inequality that we face in this country, the discrimination, the disenfranchisement, the oppression, the abuse, all stems from the fact that those with power treat us that way because they see our color and they value our lives less because of that.
Bill, let it bring back,